So, hello everyone. So my name is Yvan Genuer, and today I will speak about the purpose of this talk is to speak about SAP and particular stuff in SAP, the forensics, and also a little bit anti-forensics. Yeah, the usual disclaimer: no SAP was badly used during this research. And just one slide about me. So, like I say, I'm Yvan. I work for Onapsis. Onapsis, it's a SAP security company dedicated to SAP security. So, of course, we work a lot with SAP. I work on SAP. I started SAP Basis Administrator 20 years ago already. And I switched to SAP Security like 10 years ago, and I do some research from like 5 years, close to 6 years now, and I find more than 100 vulnerability on SAP, and I never provide any defensive talk. So today, this is my first defensive talk, so I'm really, I'm proud to for one time, to not break everything. This is the agenda for today. More or less why we decide to take time and to analyze and study the SAP forensics. One part about the white paper we write for this during this research. What we call an SAP Data Sources. Then the last part, the fourth part, it's I try to explain some specificity when we need to do some forensics on SAP, so something good to know, and the closing parts. So, first of all, why we decide to take a look on SAP forensics? First question, who know what is SAP? Raise your hand. Who know what is SAP? We'll figure out how SAP is huge. Only that? Few people? Really? Come on. SAP runs the world. Did you know that? No? I don't trust you. All right, so SAP, it's an ERP, and when I say it runs the world, this is what I think. For sure, okay, they are in the company, you have the network layer, the OS layer, the database layer, and in front of everything, you have the business application layer, and 90% of the business application layer in the world, it's an SAP system, more or less. All right. So, of course, what can go wrong if you compromise an SAP system? Everything. If you reach high privileges on the SAP system, you can do what we call espionage. You can leak the data. You can tamper the data. You can do, for example, fraud. You can modify financial transaction, etc., etc. And the most easy stuff to do is what we call sabotage. It just we can crash everything. So it's very crucial to take care about SAP security. So this is why we decide to speak about it. Also, in the last 10 years, we find that there are more and more, not more and more, but the number, for example, of the security vulnerability patch during each month do not decrease. It's like, at least it's always the same, but there are a lot more and more researchers also in how companies, we get more and more requests to do pen tests, to do training, etc., etc. So a lot of activity around SAP security these last years increase. So for sure, in the future, we are pretty sure the number of incidents also will increase. And in this incident, the forensics request will increase also. We already have some requests, but I'm pretty sure in 5 years, we'll get a lot more forensics investigation. And if you take a look on what public information you have in forensics and SAP, you will find this first talk, so it's 10 years ago, here at Troopers, provided by Mariano and GP. And they already spot interesting thing about SAP security, and they provide already some Some very interesting stuff. The second talk we can find is this one. So this is also 10 years ago. It's provided by Dimitri and Yevgeny from the ERP-SCAN at this time. And this one is more like a mix with offensive and forensics, because basically they present how to attack the SAP portal, and at the same time they present what you can catch in the log and what you can miss in the log, etc. So it was a mix, but still interesting. And the year after, you can find this one, again by GP and Will. And this one was more like an example of how complex can be one attack, and what you can catch in log, and how to study this kind of attack. But it was only one example. Okay? And that's pretty much all you can find. So what we have is 10 years old information, and there are something like it's highlight, all this talk highlight. It's very hard to cover this subject in one talk, because there are a lot of information in SAP Security and in forensics also. So this is why when I study this subject, I decide to grab all my information, everything I know. I try to write. At the beginning, it was a documentation, and then it finished with like a white paper. And I'm here to also present you the white paper, and this is what it really is. So this is the link if you want to take a look. Normally it's work, and there are no malware. They are the real link, and this is just a QR code to access it. I can stay a little. All right, everyone download the malware, it's okay now? Because I worked on SAP mobile application a few years ago. Just say it. So this is 60 pages, the white paper. So when we start with, let's start writing something on forensics on SAP, and you continue, and at the end you say, whoa, okay, this is huge. I try to cover 19 data sources. So there are a lot of information. And in the white paper, also in the introduction, I try to introduce what is an SAP system and what some specificity you can have when you need to do some forensics investigation on SAP system. The target audience for this white paper is the SAP basis team, the security team, and also the incident response team. Why I precise this target audience is because, from my point of view, there are two different kind of investigation you can do in SAP. So the first one on the left, this is what we call the business investigation. It's like what the intruder or the attacker do as post-exploitation. Do they modify some financial information? Do they delete something? We don't know. And on the right, sorry, less for you. And on the left, this is more like technical perspective, like how the attacker get in, what kind of vulnerability he exploit to get in, etc., etc. So this is more like, okay, we would like to know what was the walkthrough, what was the path the attacker do to access to the data. And the white paper, and also this talk, it's only on technical side, all right? I'm not a business functional guy, so I'm still, I try to keep where I'm good. But very, very important, it's very important to understand that the communication between these two kinds of investigation is very important, because sometimes you have some difficulty to find something as a technical team, but the business team finds something very, very weird, and so they can provide some information like, hey, they modify this process. Okay, and the technical guys can say, okay, this process, it means this table, maybe this transaction, and stuff like that, and you can start the investigation like that. And the reverse is also possible. The technical guys find that one vulnerability was exploited, and then they can provide, we know that this list of tables could be accessed. So the business team can take a look and understand what's going on. So two different things, and we stay in the technical stuff. All right. SAP Data Sources. What we call SAP Data Sources here, to be very simple, an SAP Data Sources for us, it's like somewhere in an SAP system where you can grab some information about what the attacker do. It could be log, table, a lot of things. I would like to precise one important thing. When you work on SAP system, so I try to represent my beautiful SAP system. So there are one host, SAP host 1. You have one SAP instances working with one database instances. So the SAP instances, very, very, very simple. It just provides some services, network services. So you can find a lot of network services. I don't know if you do some penetration testing again in SAP system, but when you scan for the first time the SAP system, it's like, whoa, a lot of services exposed. So this is exposed by the SAP instance. And the data sources could be a log file in the OS layer, like Truss log, log file, etc. But also you can find some data sources inside the database in table, all right? So the log file could be a text file, and also there are some files, some information you can grab in the file, but in the proprietary format. So this is not a text file. This is more like, yeah, you can edit it. But you can use SAP to study it. And the whole thing, it's what we call an SAP system, all right? What we have in the real life, we are more like something like that, like several hosts, so that's 1, 2, and 3. We have 3 instances, and this is one SAP system, all right? And remember, the SAP instance expose services. So in this example, we have one database instances, but you can have a lot of services. All right? So what is important in forensic point of view, it's because if an attacker, for example, exploits one vulnerability in the port 330, the log, the traces of this attack can exist only in SAP host 3. So if you keep your research in the main instances, on the DB instances, you could miss something. So it's very important if you deal with an SAP system with what we call a multi-instance system, it's very important to take care in whole instances. And trust me, sometimes it could be very, very difficult. Because one time I remember we have like 10 instances in one system. So yeah, and also, of course, each instances can have their own configuration of the data sources. So, this is a list of all SAP data sources I analyzed during this research. So, it looks like a lot, but I try to manage to present it. So, I just put the name like that, so I precise the SAP instance type, because in SAP there are 2 types of instances. So if I get back my picture, the SAP instances can be an ABAP instances, or also it can be a Java instances. This is, I will not go deeper in this kind of instances. This is just to let you know there are 2 different technology behind, and sometimes the SAP data sources for forensics exist on ABAP, and sometimes it exists on Java. So it's good to know if you deal with ABAP or Java, or both, of course. So there are some data sources only present on ABAP, some others are only present on Java, etc., etc. Also, I put the agent here. The agent is particular component because if I get back the picture again, I had a new box. So each server, each SAP server have an SAP, at least one, maybe more SAP agents. Again, I explain everything in the white paper if you want more information about what is an SAP agent and why this SAP agent is mandatory. But it's good to know that this agent has their own log file, and it's interesting to take care also about it. And I put 2, maybe I'm not good placed. And I put 2 other, I call it standalone. It's just because whoops, it's just because this is a SubFooter and a web dispatcher, and this is not the SAP instances. This is more like a binary provided by SAP, and you can have this binary completely working alone. So this is why I put this SAP system as standalone. And for the format, most of the data sources have the file format. It could be text file or proprietary format. And also, few of the data sources can be found in the table. In the white paper, I tried to structure the analysis like that. So for each data sources, I explain a few descriptions. I tried to find whole parameters involved in the configuration of the data sources, and also I tried to explain what you need to look as a forensics investigator, and also try to, in anti-forensics, basically I tried to break the log. I tried to figure out what can I do as an attacker to hide or tamper my traces. So for each data sources, I tried to follow this. And this is example just for let you know. For the description, also for each of them, I try to put a little table with very quickly you can understand if it's activated by default or not, where you can find the log, etc., etc. All right? OK, now let's switch to what I call the good to know. It's more like it's not possible to go through whole SAP data sources in 1 hour. It's not working like that. So it's more like I would like just to provide you some information on few of them, what is important, and also what we put them in the white paper. So first of all, the syslog. So the syslog, it's very, very important because the syslog, it's like the main log in SAP system. This is not dedicated to security stuff, but you can find a lot of information. When I say a lot, it could be very, very verbose. You can compare the syslog to the var log messages on Linux, for example. So this is an example of what we can get from the syslog. This is completely classical. You have the time, the date, the time, also the client, the user, etc., etc. You have the description, and here, in this column, you have what we call the message ID. It's very interesting because what SAP provides for each kind of entry, they try to provide what they call a message ID, and this is they categorize the syslog entry. So for information, if you filter the syslog with this kind of filter, for example, the US star, you get all information in the syslog related to the user. If the user is locked, if the user try to do something wrong. And also, they are all very interesting to filter. For the syslog, this is the parameter involved in the configuration of these data sources, the syslog. And there are one parameter very, very, very important. Is this one. Basically, this is the size of the syslog. All right? So the size of the syslog is not a number of entry or stuff like that. This is the size of the file in the file system. By default, this is 10 megabytes. So SAP system is used like 1 terabyte of data. The workload is awesome. But by default, this is 10 megabytes. It means what? It means if the syslog is not well configured, and the SAP system is like a production system or a huge production system, you have more like 2 hours of history in the syslog. So 2 hours is nothing. In some incident appear, you lose a lot of data. So I will repeat several times today, but the configuration of the SAP data sources, so syslog in this example, is crucial. Because many times, we get, hey, yeah, we enable this log, and we get everything. And when we try to look, it's completely empty because it's enabled, but the configuration is useless. So yeah, I find also during these switches this. Maybe you can notice something wrong. Let you few seconds. This is a syslog, but all the entry is fake. Because I find a way, basically, with a high privilege user, I find a way to pollute this syslog. I can write any kind of arbitrary messages in the syslog. So you can enter some fake attack, or you can enter like the system restart, because it's right in the syslog, but the system never restarts. So I find it in this particular standard module. The name is Defense Force in Public Security. Yes, SAP has a Defense Force in Public Security module. This is another story. And yeah, it could be complicated because it means what? The only clue you can have to spot this is fake on the top left, this is the name, the username of who provide these entries. And for example, if you write an entry that this user tried to log in, this is not normal to have a user in this column. You know what I mean? So it's not easy to spot, but be careful if you did with the syslog, it could be complicated. Not complicated, but try to not completely blind trust the syslog. The next one, I would like to speak, it's developer trusses. Again, the developer trusses, the developer trusses is not a security dedicated sources, but it could be very, very interesting for us. Why? Because this is a list of files in particular directory, and this file, it's very interesting because normally this is dedicated for developer. And also you can have different level of trusses, but when something's gone wrong, a lot of time you have this information in this file. Basically, this is a very good data sources to work additionally with the syslog. But there are one very, very important thing with the developer trust. So the mechanism of the developer trust is after each SAP restart, is a system restart, or the instances restart, the log is back up in .old, like you can see. So it means what? It means if your system restarts twice after an incident, you lost everything. Because it erased itself 2 times and it's gone. So be careful if someone, you know, some incident, stuff like that, and yeah, the SAP system will restart, so we are afraid, so we just shut down it. So, okay, so you restart 2 times, and we lost it. Quickly about the developer trusses, so the pattern is very, it's like that, so DEV underscore followed by something, and this something is related to the services provided by the instances. So you can recognize the MS for the message server, the enqueue server, etc., etc. So this is very easy to spot if you think, okay, we get an issue from the message server. So for example, this is the 10 cables or the Be Trusted attack pattern. Just look in this file and you can find some information. This is the same for the ICM. ICM, it's an Internet Communication Manager. And for example, you can spot this weird HTTP request. And this is where you can have some more information than the syslog. So developer trust. I would like to spot one thing. It's not very well known from people from security. The basis team know it. It's about this particular, it's a DAV underscore W. And what it's important because in SAP system, the SAP system work with what we call the work process. And if this is a SAP syslog example. And as you can see, there are a column, and the column name is process number. It means this is a process number where when the issue appear, this is the process number who handled this execution. And why it's important to have it is because the process number can be related to a developer trusses, So, for example, in this syslog, you know that, okay, the process number involved is 5, 5, 1, and 3. So just take a look on the developer Truss DEV underscore 1, 5, and 3, and you can get more information about what's happened. All right? So it could be very good to match the both information. Speaking about the trusses level, it's good to know that you can decrease and increase the trusses level of the developer truss dynamically with this command. So using the command kill to send the signal USR01, you decrease the level, and USR02, you increase the level. So it means what? It means if someone, if the attacker reach a high privilege and have able to do some OS command, he can just decrease 3 times the trust level, and the trust level just reach the 0. And 0, it means it trusts nothing. By default, it's 1. But there are a lot of parameters involved in the developer trust configuration, but I would like to highlight 2 of them. The first one is the trust hide sec data. So by default, this is on, and what this parameter do is just replace by star if some password appear in the developer trusses. Because in the developer trusses, you can have a lot of information, and sometimes you have the user and the password for particular communication. So this one, it could be, it's by default by on, but an attacker can change it to put off. And this is the dynamic. So you change it, you put off, and you also can level up the trusses, and you can get some password. And the last one, the second one, it's a trusses resolution. Basically, by default, it's 1, but if you put 0, it just removes the timestamp in the log file. And trust me, without any timestamp, it's hard to find what's going on and where. Of course, I need to speak a little about the SAP Security Audit Log. So the SAP Security Audit Log, it's what SAP provides to log its security activities. So this is a dedicated data sources for security activities. It's enabled by default, but in few whole system before 2020, some system is not enabled by default. But there are one thing I would like to speak for SAP Audit Log. It's not easy to configure. This is the parameter involved, all right? And even inside SAP system, when you log in and you want to configure, there are a lot of possibilities. When I say a lot, it's good because it can fit what you want exactly for this system. I want to log this on this, but it's very, very easy to fail to configure this security audit log. And I just would like to provide one thing. I explained everything about the configuration in the white paper. But here, I just would like to insist, OK, it's good to enable the security audit log, but it's better to have a good configuration. Because one time, you come, hey, we have activated, everything works, OK, let's look. Oh, yeah, you log everything in client 00. But that's all. Not the production client, nothing more. So, useless. Yeah, well, a few words about the ICM. So the ICM, again, so this is the Internet Communication Services. This is more or less the HTTP web server of SAP. It's very good to know that this is where you can catch very classical stuff related to web. So you can catch dangerous web services accessed, the number of clients. Maybe you can already catch some brute force, etc., etc. And I provide the list of well-known. So this is the list. You can find the list of URL, and beyond this URL, there are some public exploits. So at least try to take a look and to verify this list. One thing about the web dispatcher. The web dispatcher is more or less exactly the same thing as the ICM, but the web dispatcher is usually it's used as a proxy to an end load balancer for incoming HTTP requests. So you have, for example, the DMZ, you have your web dispatcher, then when you communicate through internet, you reach the web dispatcher, and the web dispatcher communicate with some backend. I will not go deeper on it, just be very careful because I find remotely with authentication and XSS in the admin dashboard of the web dispatcher. So if someone calls for investigation and you go to the admin dashboard, maybe you can have something wrong. So be careful. It's quite old. This is 1 year old vulnerability, so everything is patched. One word about the SubFooter. The SubFooter, it's more or less exactly the same thing as the web dispatcher, but dedicated to SAP protocol. It means the SubFooter could be an entry point. The SubFooter is what you can find over internet, and it could be an entry point for an attacker. Okay, an entry point to the company. And this is just an example. If you scan for how many SubFooter you can find, you'll find more than 5,000 SAP router in the wild. Again, this is why we decide to put inside the white paper, we put the web dispatcher and the SubFooter. It's because of the exposition of this kind of binary. So even if you want to do some forensics in SAP system, it's very important to take care of these two little binaries, the web dispatcher and the SubFooter. OK, I would like to change a little now. We'll speak about something very more specific you can find in SAP. It's, the name is table change document. So by default, SAP provides a feature to monitor and log change on a critical object. Object, more or less, it's a table. So yes, there are some tables where if you do something, it's logged by default. So the parameters look like that. So it can log any, if you delete something, insert something, or adapt something. All right? But I like to say this is enabled partially by default, because in this example, so this is example for the object name bank. It just try to monitor one table. The table name is BNKA. And as you can see, it's a check if some line is deleted. It's in this table, but it do not monitor if some line is inserted. So be careful again about the configuration of this kind of data sources. There are more than 800 objects logged by default, so this is a very good point. By default, you can have a lot of things, but again, sometimes everything is logged, deletion, insertion, and update, so sometimes only one thing is logged. So this is an example of what is logged, and of course, there are a lot of tables without this kind of monitoring. And this is quite normal because some tables are huge, and it's not possible to log everything on SAP system. This is crazy to think like, yeah, just log everything. No, trust me, some of this table is very, very huge. But it's good to know that it's possible to activate the log to modify this kind of change document log. And how it looks like that. I just put an example because it's not necessarily easy to understand. This is one line by change, and on the top left, this is the I for insert, D for delete, and U for, yeah, update. Everyone follow, good. And so what we learn from this input, we know, okay, this user with this name from this department on the client 800, insert 5 new IBAN, the bank account, using the transaction SM34, and she did it just before going to lunch. So this is kind of information you can have from this log. This is very good. The issue here is this user was in PTU, but yeah. All right. Another thing I would like to spot, it's the user and authorization. So the user and authorization could be an entry point to understand what's going on in the system. And there are one transaction in SAP very, very important, the name is the SUIM. And with this transaction, you can grab all information you want from a user and privilege for a user. So, for example, you can do some selection, and you can find a lot of different types of users. So you can find all the user with all privileges. You can find all the user are able to execute OS command, for example, or all the user who with the capability of modify particular or sensitive table, etc., etc. And this is also when something can begin, because, for example, if you list all the user with the SAP all privilege, and sometimes you can find that, okay, this user, I think, is not match the pattern of all the user. So this one is obvious, but it's happened sometimes. The SAP system is configured with one language, let's say with German language. So the user pattern follows some very particular pattern, and one user is created and does not follow this pattern, and the name is like administrator. So maybe you can spot that, okay, this one could be not a normal user. I would like to speak about Java system. So remember, there are two types of SAP instances, Java and ABAP. I speak a lot about ABAP. In the Java system, SAP made a huge effort to centralize the log. And thank you very much, because at least if you need to deal with a Java system, I don't know, someone call you, we get maybe an incident. Okay, just back up this directory, and after that, we can start. But everything are stored in this directory, at least 99%. Also, the log viewer, it's interfaces. This is a web interfaces, and you can have a lot of the configuration. You can configure it, and what they provide what they call a view name. And the view name is more or less a category, and when by default, SAP already put some category to, it's like a bundle of logs. So for example, if you go to the category developer trusses, you get all the developer trusses, all the file. So it's interesting. In the HTTP response also, yes, this is where you can find the ICM HTTP response file, very classical. And also there are one thing in the log viewer interesting, it's you can upload what SAP call open external file. So basically you can back up the log file from a remote system, and in your system, instead on your laptop, you can upload this log file and you can study it locally. So it could be very interesting, because sometimes after an incident, they prefer to shut down the system, and you can just copy the log and study the log inside your system. So everything are here. So also this is a little issue. If an attacker reaches high privilege on any layer, database, SAP, or OS, it can remove everything from this directory. So, few words about the agent. I will not go deeper of the log of whole agents. I would like to highlight why we decide to put the agent inside this white paper. It's because, again, the agent is mandatory for to exist on all systems. And these last years, we find a lot of vulnerability in the agent directly. And so it means the agent could be an entry point for an attacker now. 5 years ago, maybe not, but now with it's completely possible to find the first step of the attack come from the agent. All right. First failed. Soon, normally I try to provide a little this is more like a script, so I call it SAP Log Collector. And this is two scripts, one on one Bash and one PowerShell. And this script just try to grab all the log in one system. It just calculate the checksum and create a zip file. So basically, this is kind of script you want to use to grab all the log in one time, and it could be interesting. Yeah, soon, because I have some issue with the GitHub. As a conclusion, I would like to provide few things. The first things, as you may understand, an SAP environment can be very complex. You can deal with ABAP, with Java, Linux, Windows, different type of database, and also on the number of data sources could be huge. So it's very hard to try to present it with a very simple way. And what is very good is SAP provide a lot of tools to analyze the log. So for example, for ABAP, there are one transaction, like there are one program in the SAP application to study the log, and for for each log, you have something to do. You do not need to do it manually, of course. Please enable all necessary logging and verify the configuration. Yes, I repeat myself, I know, but it could be very, very bad news when you say. So verify the configuration of it. Again, everything is in the white paper. I put all the configuration. I try to explain everything about it. And if you try, not if you try, but please back up, export the log. Basically, in all SAP data sources I study, if the attacker reach enough privilege, he can do anything on log. He can remove it. He can tamper the log file. You can do whatever you want. So it means what? It means if the attacker, you find that the attacker reach enough privileges, be very careful when you try to audit in the log, because the log could be also tampering. All right, so I put whole data source, all the reference, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Any questions? No one?
Yeah, it was very clear.
Thanks. Hey, Yvan, if I got you right, you wrote this white paper, and there was something, this is meant for security folks and SAP basic folks and so on. Have you sent this to SAP? This white paper?
The white paper, if I send it to SAP?
Yeah?
No.
Okay, thank you.
But you can grab it, it's free.
So are they aware of the white paper?
Don't worry.
So do you know whether they are aware of the white paper? Does is SAP aware that the white paper exists?
No, they know.
Okay. Okay.
Hi, thanks for the talk. I got a question in regards to the syslog pollution thing. Maybe I missed it. Does SAP consider this as a security vulnerability, or is this bone fixed? What the status? Because my assumption is, even if I have very high privileges, I should not be able to pollute the syslog in any way.
Yeah. To be honest, I would like to avoid the subject, but yes, I reported to SAP, and they reject it. Because for them, it was not a vulnerability.
All right, any more questions? Okay, then thank you very much again, Yvan.
Thank you.